Captain Kim Soo-jin stared at the green lights dancing across her ship's control panel. The Harmony had been traveling through deep space for 3 days, following strange signals that Earth's listening stations had picked up from far away. She was tired, but something about these signals made her feel worried. "Captain, we're getting closer to where the signals are coming from," said Lieutenant Park Min-ho. He was young, maybe 25, and this was his first mission away from Earth. His hands shook a little as he worked at his station. Kim nodded and looked at the big screen in front of her. Space looked normal, just stars and darkness. But the signals were getting stronger. They sounded like someone crying for help, but in a language no human had ever heard before. "Put the sounds on the speakers," Kim ordered. The bridge filled with strange noises, clicks, whistles, and what sounded like screaming. Even though Kim couldn't understand the words, she could hear the fear in those voices. Someone was in terrible trouble. "Captain, I'm seeing something," called out Inson. Lee Dae-hai from her seat. "There are lights ahead, but they're not moving like normal stars." Kim felt her stomach drop. The lights were fires, huge fires burning across what looked like entire worlds. As they got closer, the Harmony's cameras showed them something that made everyone on the bridge go quiet. Planets were dying. Cities that had once been bright with life were now just burning ruins. Strange, dark ships moved between the worlds like hungry animals. These ships didn't look like anything humans had ever built. They seemed alive, with skin instead of metal, and they pulsed like giant hearts. "My God," whispered Park Min-ho. "What happened here?" The answer came in a message that their computers finally managed to translate. A weak voice spoke through the static. "This is the Cathara Collective. We are under attack by the Devourers. They consume everything. Our people. Our worlds, our hope. We have asked the Galactic Council for help, but they have turned away from us. They say we are not worth saving. If anyone can hear this, please help us. We are dying." Kim felt anger rise in her chest. The Galactic Council was a group of advanced alien species that ruled most of the galaxy. Earth had tried to contact them years ago, but they had ignored humanity. They called humans too violent, too primitive to join their civilized society. "Captain, look at this," Dae-hai said, her voice shaking. She pointed to her screen, which showed a map of the area. Red dots marked dead worlds, and the red was spreading fast. "The Devourers are moving toward more populated areas," Kim realized. "They're not just attacking randomly, they're hunting." If her words had summoned them, new contacts appeared on their sensors. 3 of the bioships were heading straight for the Harmony. These ships were huge, each one the size of a city, and they moved with deadly purpose. "Captain, they've seen us," Park Min-ho reported. "They're accelerating." Kim made a decision that would change everything. All power to engines. "We're going home." The Harmony turned and ran, but not before Kim ordered her crew to record everything they could. The galaxy needed to see what was happening here. The Galactic Council might have turned their backs on the dying, but Kim knew humans would. Not as they escaped into hyperspace. Kim looked back at the burning worlds. The Cathara had been a peaceful people, traders and farmers who had never hurt anyone. They had 7 different species working together, sharing their knowledge and culture. Now they were being eaten alive by monsters, and the galaxy's most powerful civilizations were doing nothing. "Set course for Earth," Kim ordered. "Maximum speed." "Captain, what are we going to do?" asked Dae-hai. "Those things are destroying entire worlds. How can we possibly help?" Kim looked at the young woman and saw her own fear reflected there, but she also saw something else's determination. It was the same look she had seen in human eyes throughout history, whenever good people faced impossible odds. "We're going to do what humans do best," Kim said quietly. "We're going to fight." During the long journey home, Kim watched the recordings over and over. She saw families running from the bioships, saw cities being consumed by living metal, saw the last desperate messages from worlds that would never send another signal. The Galactic Council had abandoned these people because saving them would be difficult and dangerous. They had decided that some lives were worth more than others. They had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. When Earth finally appeared on their screens, Kim felt a mixture of relief and dread. Relief because they were home and safe. Dread because she knew what had to happen next. The galaxy had turned away from the innocent. The civilized species had chosen to let millions die rather than risk their own comfort and safety. But Earth was different. They had always been willing to fight for strangers, to risk everything for people they had never met. Kim smiled grimly as she prepared her report. The Galactic Council was about to learn why they had been right to fear humanity's violent nature. Sometimes, the galaxy needed violence. Admiral Choi Tae-sung stood in the underground war room beneath Seoul, watching the terrible images on the wall screens. Captain Kim's recording played for the 100th time, showing worlds burning and people dying while the galaxy's most powerful nations did nothing. "Turn it off," he said quietly. His aide, Colonel Bae Junesio, reached for the controls. "Ow. Wait, let it play again." The room was full of Earth's military leaders. Generals, admirals, and politicians had come from every human world to see the footage. They watched in silence as alien children ran from monsters, as cities fell, as entire civilizations disappeared. "The Galactic Council released a statement this morning," said General Nam Hyun-woo. He was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes. "They said the Cathara situation is unfortunate, but necessary for galactic stability. They're sealing their borders and letting the Devourers finish the job." Someone in the back of the room cursed. Admiral Choi didn't blame them. The Council controlled thousands of worlds and had weapons that could destroy stars. Or they could have stopped the Devourers easily, but they chose not to. "What about the other species?" asked Captain Oyansu. She commanded Earth's newest destroyer and was known for asking hard questions. "Are any of them helping?" "No," Nam replied. "The Council ordered all member species to stay away. They don't want to risk a war with the Devourers. It's easier to let them eat the small civilizations." The room fell quiet again. Everyone knew what this meant. The galaxy's civilized species were cowards who only cared about themselves. They had advanced technology and beautiful cities, but they had no courage. President Han Mi-young's voice came through the speakers from the orbital station above Earth. "Admiral Choi, you have my authorization to do whatever is necessary. The Cabinet voted this morning. We will not stand by while innocents die." Choi nodded. He had expected this. Humans had always been different from other species. When others saw problems, humans saw challenges. When others saw hopeless situations, humans saw opportunities to prove themselves. "Begin Operation Righteous." "Fury," he ordered. The words spread across human space like wildfire. On Mars, the old shipyards that had been quiet for years suddenly blazed with light. Workers streamed in to build new warships. On the Moon, weapons factories that had been making mining equipment switched to producing missiles and guns. Colonel Bae watched the reports coming in from across the solar system. "Admiral, we're getting volunteer requests from every world. More people want to fight than we have ships for." This didn't surprise Choi. When humans heard about the Cathara massacre, something ancient and powerful had awakened in them. It was the same feeling their ancestors had when they fought against slavery, when they stood up to bullies, when they protected the weak. "How many ships can we put together?" Choi asked. 200 warships within the month, reported Captain Park So-young. She was in charge of fleet coordination. The Vengeance, Retribution, and Fury's Edge will be ready first. The crews are already training. Choi looked at the tactical display showing human space. It was tiny compared to the galaxy, just a few dozen star systems. But those systems were about to produce the largest war fleet in human history. "What about Marines?" he asked. 50,000 volunteers so far, said Major Kong Soon-min. "Combat veterans. They know this won't be easy." The Major was right. The Devourers were unlike any enemy humans had ever faced. They were part machine, part living creature, and completely without mercy. Their bioships could heal themselves, and they fought with the single purpose of consuming everything in their path. But humans had advantages too. They'd been fighting wars for thousands of years. They understood tactics, strategy, and the psychology of battle. Most importantly, they were willing to die for strangers. "Admiral, there's something else," said Commander Shindu Haeon. He was young, but had already proven himself in 3 different conflicts. The council sent us a message. They're ordering us to stay out of this. Choi almost laughed. What did you tell them? I told them we'd consider their request, Shin replied. With a small smile, I didn't say we'd follow it. The room filled with quiet laughter. Everyone knew what that meant. The Galactic Council had no power over humanity because humans had never asked to join their club. Earth made its own decisions. The shipyards are ahead of schedule, reported Lieutenant Commander Song Ji-hoon. They're working 24 hours a day. The workers say they won't sleep until every ship is ready. Choi felt proud of his species. While the galaxy's advanced civilizations held meetings and made excuses, humans were building a war machine. They didn't have the most advanced technology, but they had something more important: the will to fight. How long until we can launch? He asked. 72 hours, Park So-young answered. The first wave will be ready to go. Choi nodded and looked around the room at his officers. They were tired, stressed, and probably scared. But they were also determined. They knew they were about to fight an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations. Gentlemen, ladies, he said quietly, in 3 days, we're going to show the galaxy what happens when you prey on the innocent. The council thinks we're too primitive to matter. We're about to learn why that's not always a disadvantage. War room erupted in cheers as officers hurried to their duties. Across human space, the greatest military mobilization in history was beginning. The galaxy had turned away from the dying. But humanity was coming, and they were bringing everything they had. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Cathara homeworld system, and Captain Kim Soo-jin felt her breath catch in her throat. She was now commanding the dreadnought Retribution, the biggest warship humanity had ever built. And through its thick armor, she could feel the ship's massive engines humming with power. My God, whispered Lieutenant Park Min-ho from his station. Look at that. The Cathara homeworld was surrounded by devourer ships. Hundreds of the biovessels moved around the planet like sharks circling wounded prey. The world's surface glowed with fires where cities had been, and streams of escape pods fled toward space, only to be hunted down by smaller devourer craft. Admiral Choi to all ships, the CUM system crackled. This is what we came for. Things down there are about to learn what happens when you hurt innocent people. All ships, weapons free. Kim felt her heart pound as she gave her own orders. Helm, take us into the fight. Weapons, target the largest bioship. Marines, prepare for boarding operations. The human fleet moved forward like a wave of metal and fire. The devourers had been expecting another easy meal, more helpless victims to consume. Instead, they found 200 human warships bristling with nuclear missiles, kinetic cannons, and plasma weapons. The first salvo lit up space like a new sun. Human missiles slammed into bioships that had never faced such concentrated firepower. The Devourer's living armor, which had easily absorbed the weak weapons of peaceful species, cracked and burned under the fury of human engineering. Direct hit on the enemy flagship, reported Weapons Officer Lee DeHai. Their biohull is breaching. Kim watched as the massive Devourer ship, something the size of a city, began to leak atmosphere and strange fluids into space. But it wasn't dead yet. The bioship's wounds began to close as it healed itself, and it turned toward the human fleet with obvious hunger. They're regenerating, Park Min-ho called out. How do we kill something that can heal itself? The answer came from Colonel Bae Genesio, whose voice echoed through the fleet communications. The same way we always have. Hit them harder than they can heal. A's marine transports were already launching toward the wounded bioship. The galaxy's civilized species had abandoned boarding actions centuries ago, considering them too brutal and primitive. But humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of close combat. Marines away, Bay reported as his assault craft punched through the bioship's damaged hull. We're going in. Inside the enemy vessel, the Marines found a nightmare of living corridors and organic machinery. The walls pulsed like a heartbeat. The air was thick with spores that tried to change human DNA. But the Marines wore sealed armor and carried weapons designed for one purpose: killing things that shouldn't exist. Advancing to the central nervous system, Bay's voice came through the cum, broken by static and the sound of gunfire. These things bleed just fine once you know where to shoot them. Meanwhile, the space battle raged around them. Lieutenant Commander Song Ji-hoon led his fighter squadron in a diving attack on a cluster of Devourer scouts. The bioships moved like living things, twisting and turning in ways that defied physics. But human pilots had trained for exactly this kind of impossible fight. Break left, break left. Ow. Song called out as bioplasma bolts filled the space around his fighter. These things are fast, but they're not used to prey that fights back. His squadron split apart and came at the Devourers from 6 different directions. The bioships had evolved to hunt peaceful species that would try to run or surrender. They didn't know how to deal with fighters that attacked from multiple angles while their pilots laughed over the cum system. On the Retribution, Captain Kim watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction. The human fleet was smaller than the Devourer swarm, but they were winning. Every human ship fought like it was the last one left, and every crew member understood that they were fighting for more than just victory. "Captain, we're getting a transmission from the planet," reported Communications Officer Yu Hai-jin. "It's the Cathara survivors." The main screen filled with the image of an alien that looked somewhat like a tall, thin human with blue skin and large eyes. The creature was clearly exhausted and afraid, but when it spoke, its voice carried hope for the first time in months. "Human ships, we cannot believe you came. The council said no one would help us. They said we were not worth saving." Kim felt anger rise in her chest. The Galactic Council had written off an entire civilization because helping them would be difficult and dangerous. They had condemned millions to death rather than risk their own comfort. "Tell them we're just getting started," Kim said. The battle turned into a slaughter, but not of the Cathara. Human ships tore through biovessels with ruthless efficiency. The Devourers, who had spent centuries consuming peaceful species, suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that specialized in violence. "Enemy flagship is breaking apart," Lee Da-hai reported. Colonel Bay's Marines reached the central brain. The massive bioship convulsed and died, its living systems shutting down as human explosives destroyed its core. Around it, other Devourer vessels began to retreat, but the human fleet pursued them relentlessly. "Admiral Choi to all ships," cum system announced. "No survivors. These things chose to prey on the innocent. Now they pay the price." As the last Devourer ship exploded in silent fire, the surviving Kithara vessels sent a simple message: "Thank you." But Kim knew the real victory was just beginning. Across the galaxy, every species with communication equipment had watched the battle. For the first time in millennia, they had seen total war. They had seen it won by the species the Council had dismissed as primitive. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes primitive was exactly what you needed. Ambassador Kelter of the Hegemony arrived at the Cathara homeworld with 50% of the Galactic Council's finest warships. His vessel, the Eternal Wisdom, was twice the size of any human ship and armed with weapons that could crack planets. He had come to put an end to humanity's reckless behavior. "Open a channel to the human fleet," Kelter ordered his communications officer. He was tall and pale, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed with inner light. His species had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, and he had never been challenged by primitives before. Admiral Choi Tae-sung received the transmission on the bridge of his flagship Vengeance. The alien's face appeared on the main screen, and Choi could see the arrogance in those glowing eyes. Human Commander Kelter spoke in perfect English, though his voice carried the tone of someone talking to a child. "You have interfered with galactic order. The Devourer situation was being handled through proper diplomatic channels. You will cease your aggressive actions immediately and submit to Council authority." Choi looked at the alien for a long moment. Around him, his bridge crew waited in tense silence. They had just finished saving an entire civilization from extinction, and now the galaxy's rulers were telling them they had done something wrong. "Let me make sure I understand," Choi said slowly. "You're angry because we stopped a genocide that you refused to prevent." "The Council does not make decisions based on emotion," Kelter replied. The Cathara were deemed expendable for the greater good. Your species lacks the wisdom to understand such complex calculations. Captain Kim Soo-jin, listening from her own ship, felt her hands clench into fists. She had seen Cathara children running from the Devourers, had watched entire cities burn while the Council did nothing. Now, this alien was calling it wisdom. Damn. Here's our response, Admiral Choi said, his voice carrying across every communication channel in the galaxy. You turned your backs on the dying. We don't negotiate with cowards. The words hit the Council fleet like a physical blow. No one had ever spoken to them this way. For thousands of years, every species had bowed to their authority, accepted their decisions without question. You dare... Kelter began, but Choi cut him off. We dare everything, the Admiral replied. Your move. First, 50 advanced warships launched energy beams that could melt asteroids, expecting the primitive humans to surrender when faced with superior technology. They had made a terrible mistake. The human fleet didn't run. It didn't surrender. It fought back with a fury that shocked the galaxy. All ships, battle formation Delta, Admiral Choi ordered. Show them what we learned fighting each other for 5,000 years. The human fleet split into 3 groups, each moving in a different direction. The Council ships, expecting a simple confrontation, suddenly found themselves surrounded. Their weapons were more advanced, but human tactics had been developed through centuries of warfare against other humans. Captain Park So-young led one group of destroyers around the Council's left flank, ships moving in perfect coordination. Enemy vessels turning to engage us, she reported, just like we planned. While the Council ships turned to face Park's group, Captain Oh Yansu attacked from the opposite direction. Her cruisers hammered the Council's rearguard with nuclear missiles and kinetic rounds. Aliens had superior shields, but they had never faced this kind of coordinated assault. They're trying to retreat, reported Commander Shin Do-han from his position near the planet. Should we let them go? Negative, Admiral Choi replied. They came here to stop us from helping innocent people. They chose this fight. The battle raged for 6 hours. Council ships were individually more powerful, but the humans fought as one unified force. Every captain knew exactly what the others were doing. Every ship moved with deadly purpose. Lieutenant Commander Song Ji-hoon's fighters swarmed around the Council flagship, too small and fast for its massive weapons to target effectively. Their point defense is failing, he reported. Not used to fighting multiple small targets. On the surface of the Cathara homeworld, General Yu Haijin's ground forces had already begun hunting down the remaining Devourer creatures. The aliens watched in amazement as human soldiers fought through infested cities, clearing out monsters that the Council had deemed impossible to defeat. How are they doing this? One Cathara survivor asked another. The Council said the Devourers were too strong to fight. Maybe, the other replied. The Council was wrong about many things. Back in space, the tide of battle had turned completely. The Council fleet, designed for intimidation rather than actual combat, began to break apart under sustained human assault. Their ships were beautiful works of art, but human vessels were built for war. Council flagship is requesting terms, reported Communications Officer Lee Dae-hai. Tell them the terms are simple, Admiral Choi said. Leave, now, and never interfere with us again. Ambassador Kelter's face appeared on the screen one more time. His arrogance was gone, replaced by something humans had never seen in a council. Members' eyes, fear. This is not over, he said quietly. The council will not forget this insult. Good, Admiral Choi replied, because we want you to remember what happens when you abandon the innocent. The council fleet limped away. Their perfect ships, trailing atmosphere and debris. Behind them, the human fleet remained in perfect formation, ready for whatever came next. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Kim watched the alien ships disappear into hyperspace. The galaxy had just learned that humanity would not be controlled, threatened, or intimidated. What now? Asked Lieutenant Parkman-ho. Kim smiled grimly. Now we show them what happens when you give humans a reason to be angry. The reckoning had begun. The final Devourer nest world hung in space like a massive tumor, its surface covered in biomechanical structures that pulsed with dark energy. Major Kang Seungmin stood on the bridge of the assault transport hammer, watching the twisted planet grow larger as they approached. "That's where it all started," said Colonel Bae Janisio, standing beside him. "The first devourer, Queen. Kill her, and the rest of the hive dies." The human fleet had spent 3 months hunting down every devourer ship and colony. They had followed the biovessels back to their source, leaving a trail of burning nest worlds behind them. Only this one remained. "Begin orbital bombardment," Admiral Choi ordered from the flagship Vengeance. "I want that planet's surface turned to glass before we send anyone down." The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Nuclear missiles, kinetic rounds, and plasma beams rained down on the nest world. The planet's living surface writhed and screamed as centuries of devourer construction burned away. But the bombardment was just the beginning. The real work would happen inside the planet's core, where the original queen had been sleeping for thousands of years. "Surface defenses are down," reported Captain Kim Soo-jin from the Retribution. "We're detecting massive tunnels leading to the planet's center. That's where she'll be." Major Kang led the assault teams down into the burning world. The tunnels were made of living metal that tried to heal itself. But human explosives worked faster than the biotechnology could repair. His Marines fought through corridors filled with smaller devourer creatures, each one desperate to protect their dying queen. "Keep moving," Kong ordered, as his team blasted through another wall of organic machinery. "She knows we're coming." Deep in the planet's core, the devourer queen felt fear for the first time in her existence. She had consumed 1,000 civilizations, devoured entire species, and ruled through terror for millennia. But these creatures were different. Didn't run. They didn't surrender. They came for her with the single purpose of ending her forever. Contact. Sergeant Park called out as they entered the final chamber. "Visual on the target?" The queen was massive, easily the size of a building, her body a horrifying mixture of flesh and machine. Tubes and cables connected her to the planets. Systems, and her multiple eyes glowed with ancient malice. She had been beautiful once, in her own alien way. But centuries of consuming other species had twisted her into something monstrous. "This is for every world you destroyed," Major Kong whispered as he planted the final nuclear charges around the chamber. "For every innocent life you took." The explosion could be seen from orbit. The planet cracked like an egg, its core erupting in a pillar of fire that reached into space. The Devourer Queen, the nightmare that had terrorized the galaxy for so long, died screaming. Across the galaxy, every remaining Devourer ship suddenly went silent. The biovessels drifted lifeless in space as their connection to the hive mind was severed. The threat that the Galactic Council had called impossible to defeat was gone forever. Admiral reported Communications Officer Lee Dae-hai, "We're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Hundreds of species want to meet with us." Admiral Choi wasn't surprised. The galaxy had watched humanity accomplish what the advanced civilizations claimed couldn't be done. They had seen a young species do what the Council wouldn't: fight for strangers and win. "Put them through," he ordered. The first message came from the Kithara survivors. Their blue-skinned leader appeared on screen, tears streaming down his face. "We pledge our loyalty to the Terran Federation," he said. "You saved us when no one else would. We are yours forever." More messages followed. The Zilani, a species of peaceful farmers. The Korvik, skilled engineers who had been abandoned by the Council. The Threx, warrior poets who respected strength. Above all else, dozens of species that had been written off as expendable were now asking to join humanity's growing alliance. "What do we call ourselves?" asked Captain Park So-young during a strategy meeting. "We're not just humans anymore." "Free Worlds Alliance," Admiral Choi replied. "It's built on a simple principle. No one fights alone." The Galactic Council tried to maintain their authority, but their power was crumbling. Species after species left their alliance to join humanity's growing coalition. The Council's threats meant nothing to civilizations that had seen humans face impossible odds and win. President Han Myong addressed the galaxy from Earth's orbital station. Her words carried to every inhabited world. "The age of abandoning the innocent is over. The age of turning away from the weak has ended. If you prey on others, you will face us. If you abandon those in need, you will stand alone. Captain Kim stood on the observation deck of the Retribution, watching as refugee ships arrived at human space. They came from across the galaxy, seeking protection from a species that had proven it would fight for anyone. "Look at that," said Lieutenant Park Min-ho, pointing to the stream of ships. "They're not afraid of us anymore. They never should have been," Kim replied. "We fight monsters, not innocents." The Galactic Council had ruled through fear and abandonment. They had maintained order by sacrificing the weak to preserve the strong. But their time was ending. Humanity had shown the galaxy a different way. They had proven that sometimes the primitive choice was the right choice. Sometimes violence was the answer to violence. Sometimes the only way to protect the innocent was to destroy those who would harm them. The galaxy had turned away from the dying, but Earth had come in guns hot, and everything had changed forever.